Edmonton is Canada's second largest city and is the country's most northern large city, located on the North Saskatchewan River in the province of Alberta. A major oil and gas hub, hence the name of its National Hockey League team, the Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton also boasts a major research and technology center and is especially known as a center for artificial intelligence research and innovation. Edmonton Chief of Police Dale McFee reflects the city's innovation culture in his technology-driven approach to law enforcement, for which he is recognized globally. CES Government 2020 is pleased to welcome to the stage Edmonton Chief of Police Dale McFee.
Thanks very much, and I just want to take a minute to thank Don and his team for inviting me here today to kind of talk about some of the things that we talked about in Washington, D.C. a few months back, show some of the progress and some of the places we're going. We're going to change the channel a little bit here. We're not just going to talk about, the harder end of policing, so we have that too, and we have lots of it. We have real-time crime centers. I'm going to talk about workload. I'm going to talk about where we need our public-private partnerships, I would say probably the most. And we're going to get into that, and I'm going to paint a picture to you, and I think you're going to see how you can probably help us, not just in Edmonton, but in other policing, drive some of the change we need. I look at it like this, is we got to get practical. If the NFL playoffs are on right now, if you can't move the ball down the field, if you don't run a play. And if we end at the end of the day here, we're going to make some mistakes, but we need our partners to invest with us, invest at the same time of us, and I'm going to get into the model and focus on what that model looks like going forward. So the topic in Washington, D.C. was smart government, smart cities, and how smart law enforcement needs to lead some of the change. But smart law enforcement can't own the change because they can't fix what they're actually, most of their calls for services are taking. So let's talk about this for a sec. Economics, we all know, supply and demand. I'm an only child. My father passed away 5 years ago. That's my mom's garden hose. She's got all of her valuables in the backyard. Long story short, the hose is stuck wide open. What does she do? She calls her only kid. I run over there. I put my lips to the hose, and I start drinking the water. And I drink, and I drink. And I can't take on any more water, so I call Don over because I know he can take on his share of water. Then we call Joe over from Miami because he can take his share of water. But at the end of the day, we're laying on the deck. We're wore out. We're tired. We're a bunch of old guys, exception to them. I'm the old guy. Some bright university student walks by and turns down the tap. That's what we need. If we don't start turning down the taps on some of this stuff, we're not going to get it right. That's the new formula that we're trying in Edmonton. Move from fast on response to smart on crime, smart on community safety for better impact. Because I'm going to show you what's driving our calls for service, and it's not going to be where all of our infrastructure is built. Matter of fact, we got very little infrastructure. What I'm going to talk to you about the 90-cent dollars and some of the roles that I've heard, and not the 10-cent dollars, and I'll explain that to you through some of the analysis. That's me. We all have one of those. I've moderated, I've been an entrepreneur, moderated a group of business people in Canada, where $3 million to $350 million in sales. I've been able to speak around the world pretty much. I've held some different chairs, including the president of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. I was a police chief, then I was a deputy minister, which would be the equivalent of a secretary, I believe, second in government, reporting direct to the minister. All that means is I want to talk about this through different lenses. Because if I'm just the police chief looking through a police lens, I can't solve where the bulk of my police work actually is. So, what's driving the work? Here's 3 different police services. This one's a smaller police service. I was the chief there. 75% of our calls are not criminal in nature. 25% of them are criminal. 5% of those actually lead to criminal charge. Then I looked at the province that I was in charge of, which is obviously similar to the state. 81% antisocial behavior, 19% criminal. Still 5% of those lead to criminal charges. Where's all of our infrastructure built? The 5% that leads to criminal charges. Then I go to the new police service, where I'm the chief. 92.7% of our calls are priority 4s and 5s. Priority 1 being the most serious, priority 4 and 5 being the least serious. Now, let's talk about that. Let's break that down. Everybody says calls for service are going up because the population of Edmonton's growing up, so we analyze that. Reality is the calls for service are going up faster than the population growth. There's two components to policing. I'm not going to talk about this one because there's been a lot of talk about this one already. I used to chair StatsCan, which is the Canadian body for, where they integrate all of our data, census, etc. What this tells you is this is those people that we should be putting in jail. These are the people we're afraid of. What we got to stop doing is jailing the ones that we're mad at, because I'm going to show you through some data how that's actually compounding our crime rate. But these are your organized criminals. We need to be relentless on them. Those that actually deal in meth, fentanyl, etc., we need to be relentless on them. But that's not what I'm going to focus on today. So I don't want anybody thinking that this is this guy that's soft on crime, because the reality is we know hard on crime doesn't work, which is arrest and incarcerate, and we know soft on crime doesn't work, which means hugs and second chances. What we actually know that works is when we can do them both at the same time and sort the intake of the justice system, and that's what we're going to talk about. This is the first ever study in the world that was used microsimulation data on justice data. This is the province of Saskatchewan in Canada. They projected in 2011 to 2036 the population is going to grow by 16%, and the police calls for service and the police component is going to grow by 27%. That means that this province will be a justice and social welfare state unless we change our approach. Then we studied a social finance school, and we actually found out that if we could get the graduation rates of non-marginalized kids to the same as marginalized to the same as non-marginalized, which are our kids, we can actually drop that by 20%, and that is literally billions of dollars. So let's talk economics. I spoke in Toronto about a year and a half ago. Does anybody by show of hands know who Billy Beane is? Moneyball, general manager of the Oakland Athletics. I think that sums up government right there. Before we brought analytics to baseball, we paid a whole lot of things that had no impact on the game. That's what we're trying to actually look at differently. Where do we spend our money? Where do we put our resources to maximize our value and our impact? So let's look at this. Policing, law enforcement are the only entity that can reverse engineer everything that's gone bad. If we can reverse engineer it and we can use AI and predictive analytics, we should be able to start to take a chunk out of reducing it. And let's talk about how we need to do that, or one option for that. But I'm going to set the table. This is a family. That's Nana. This is real life. Living in a city. She's got 4 kids. One's got an acquired brain injury through criminal activity. One's a career criminal. The other 2 have been in and out systems, 19 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. We know the story: domestic violence, trauma, drug use, petty crime, even some serious crime. What we didn't know is that that family for 32 years has only received one source of income, social assistance. Well, we further didn't know that that one family's costing us $5 to $7 million a year because it's paid for by a whole bunch of different government agencies. Just think of the money. What we didn't know, that that family in the next generation, 8 to 12 years, at the population and the way that they're actually growing, which we can predict better than our RSPs, our savings, is going to cost us $17 to $19 million. What we didn't know is there's 2,500 of those families within the city. What we didn't know is they spend 23 times the cost. Now, just do the economics. When we're talking money, where's the money? I've been pretty fortunate to go across the world, and I can tell you it's pretty much a standardization. It certainly is in Canada. The ministries, the structures, health, social services, education, advanced education, which is universities, justice, and the other one being the employment arm of the economy, spend 80 to 89% of every budget. Where's the money? The money is the outside partnering, co-design, co-measurement, evaluation to actually get better results and to stop that stuff that you're seeing on the screen from happening. 5% of children spending $450 million on 49% of the resources. And the problem would be, if we were getting outcomes, that would be good. But we're not. And why can police lead that? Well, I learned that lesson when I was actually in charge of corrections. And this is Tom Stuker. Has anybody seen the movie George Clooney, Up in the Air? Yeah? Tom Stuker is the most frequent flyer with the airlines. He's a self-proclaimed legend, used car salesman. This guy is a legend. Bottom line is, he's flew 1 million miles in 1 year. Some of you that fly a lot knows how much that is. He's got a name on the plane there, Tom Stuker for United. So who's the Tom Stuker of jail? Well, it's these people. So Tom Stuker's favorite snack was chips and guac. This is one individual that spent life sentences in our jail, in our system, that's done it every month, 6 months or less, every time he's been in there, and has spent 80% of their adult life in jail. Bottom line is, that was a lot of chips and guac. Matter of fact, then we studied, how do we keep Tom out of jail? Well, he's only had, over the course of his life, 2 periods where he's been out for 365 days or more. Anybody want to guess what he had? A job. A job and a relationship. Imagine how that goes. These are the people that were taking the majority of our calls. But we haven't even built an infrastructure, an RMS system. We've got a homeless problem. Who's going to build the Airbnb for the homeless, where we can actually pick them up, connect them, and start to do it differently? We're sitting on a potential that's never been here before. But why I talk about this is the justice system. And that's how it goes. And we've disproportionately put things in the justice system, higher the cost, and we haven't, and I take this personal for police, we haven't done the job of sorting intake properly. AI will help us do that. If we can sort intake, get it into the right area to get the help it needs early, we can reduce the system. We're not going to fix the system. You know, we go outside, the sky's still blue. But the end of the day is we should be able to get 20 percentage points out there. 20 percentage points is billions and billions of dollars to be reinvested in a lot of the things that we're talking about today. Here's an interesting one. Being in charge of corrections, we learned that we have a remand problem, and we're up to about 55 to 72% of all our jailed population is being on remand. I'm not going to go into that because I think most people here know what that means. It means they haven't been sentenced, they're just being held pending. 58% of them get out in 1 to 14 days. That's like driving from here to the Wynn on the windiest day of the year in Vegas with about $22 million on the back of the truck with no tarp. We probably could get some better results if we actually use this data and some of the things differently. What really resonated with me, we were trying to address the overtime in corrections. So here's this guy, former police guy, hockey guy. Let's hire some economists and mathematicians. And if somebody would have told me I'd have been doing that, I would have thought they were crazy. They came back to us, you know, your overtime is one thing, but they said, you know, if you let 11% of people out of jail, you could probably expect 5% reduction in crime. And I looked at them and I go, what are you talking about? And then they say, but you got to let the right ones out. Yeah, well, thanks. But that's where we can go with this. We can get this right. There are companies out there that can build these algorithms and universities that could build these algorithms to make the decision quicker. And then we looked at another part of this. 47% of all criminal charges that the Edmonton Police Service lay, 47% of them are dropped in first instance by the Crown. What does that mean? That means 47% of all of our criminal work is for nothing. Now, what do? We can complain, well, the prosecutor's got to get this right, the judge has got to get this right, and that's not going to get us anywhere because it's not their fault. We can take charge of this through the analytics component and actually start to look at an ecosystem differently to use our data and our information better to make that decision on first instance. Here's an example of that. We're in the process of building a tool. That LSI is how they predict reoffending in jail. You either score very low, very high. Very low means should never be in jail. Very high should mean you never get out of jail. Bottom line is most of that is in 50-50. We're working right now with a company using AI to put in the hands of the police where we should be able to predict this right with over a 90% accuracy. That starts to change the game. Now there's going to be risk in that. So we need to make sure government's on board with the risk. But again, that's the job that I used to hold, and I think we can get there. This has been done somewhat in the US for judges and the prosecutions, but we've still put them in a system already, and the police need to actually start to be able to use this and make some decisions. We've all know this. The only point I'm going to make on this is it's the future. But it's also the economics. You know, the old money, if you look at it, you know, it was in real estate, you know, it was in oil and gas, etc. Tech rolled in. The new money is going to be, somebody has to work on solving these social solutions. I was in the room in Chicago about a year ago with 53 countries. There was literally $500 billion in the room. So all your big US foundations, MacArthur, Gates, but it was also the Japanese government, all the governments from around the world. And the Japanese were banging $500 million a year into this through dormant bank accounts to do R&D. We have the ability to start changing the way we approach this problem. And we know this is the ticket. Our social wicked problems, solving them, I'm going to read you an excerpt here on my phone, just so I get it right. This is a text that I had sent to the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. And when I was a police chief, when I came back, I said to some of my frontline officers, I want to meet the mayors of the homeless. I want to have a conversation with them. Who are the mayors? Every one of these communities have a mayor. And this is the text that I sent. This will be a bit of a long text, Minister, but I thought it's worth sending you based on our meeting and your knowledge. Since my role, I've been searching for the mayor's figure of speech in Brackwitz of the homeless community. About a month ago, one of my sergeants and a constable came in and we set up a breakfast with myself and one of the deputies and a gentleman matching the description of the homeless. In point form, here are some of the takeaways he shared with me. He's been on the street for 20 years by choice. He's 60 years old. He's got a vocabulary that's better than mine. Problems rooted in trauma and mainly alcohol use. Feels grateful for what he has. It's not much. Credits our police officers and one RCMP member for keeping him safe and a chance to change. Says our social system is fundamentally broken, disproportionately creating dependency versus independence. Spoke of the breakdown of the shelter system, supervised consumption sites, lack of measuring the right things. He is well educated, well spoken, has a part-time job with a restaurant that opened early for us to have a private breakfast. He cleans alleys, helps several businesses, including planting community gardens. He asked the owner to keep half his check so he can get out of the system. 2 reasons, his daughter who lives in Japan and the change of the culture on the street in relation to violence. Tells us meth, the opioids are a huge issue, worse than ever before, creating part of the unpredictability. Asked him how many people that he has met in the last year that are ready to leave the lifestyle. He said very few. Says housing first without addiction stabilization is not effective use of money and has limited success. Streets are full of parasites and predators, his words now, and has changed significantly in the past couple of years. Many people come to Edmonton from out of the city because that's where the services are and they stay. Lots more, but this is enough for now. 2 hours well spent with somebody not looking for something, but the point is that we need to get this right. This conversation will continue, and as I've given him some things or questions, or in his words, to ponder on. My takeaway is that change, we are thinking there needs to be a very large structure reset to send a clear message to all involved. It also begs for the position is how do we stop allowing silos and the creation of disconnected industries that limit outcomes? You guys can help us solve this. The private sector has this in spades because it needs to be about the net bottom line. And if we can get 20 percentage points out of our system, we actually change the game. And that's really what we're talking about. If we're trying to be efficient, which means play the game better, it's not going to work. But if we're trying to be effective, which means change the way we play the game, it's critical that our police start to think of what we can actually lead and how we can bring things together as in entities to actually drive the change. Because right now what's happening, who's played the game of risk? Yeah, What happens if you put an army on every country? First out of the game. We haven't figured it out right now. We got an army on every country. We're not even sure on the social side what we're fighting. But it's costing us an absolute fortune, a fortune. It's in the trillions. And we need to start aligning our armies to pick on the things and the drivers of the work that actually can free up so we can actually, basically, as I said, jail the people that we're afraid of and not the ones we're mad at, because there's jails that have a role, and we have a lot of bad people, but we got to start sorting them, because as I mentioned, when we mix them, we're actually artificially growing their population, and we're making more bad people. When you mix low risk and high risk, they all become high risk. Not 85% of them. This data tells you all of them. So what we're focusing on, and this is what I'm going to leave you with, is we want to build an ecosystem to change. So those are the wicked problems that are disproportionately driving calls for service, that are disproportionately driving community disruption, that are disproportionately driving our calls for gangs and terrorism and radicalization. Those are some of the risk factors that have been identified. You need your data in the middle, no question about it. We have to do this outside of government, and I'll tell you why. Because we need an integrated social practice, co-design, co-measurement, co-evaluation built with the private sector and philanthropy up front. This is a financial model. We have to have somebody that can sell the deal or basically put the deal together to give the government an immune system to actually be able to do it, and to do it not in an election cycle. And then we have to put an independent bank of money together that we can actually look at how we do this different. No different than a mutual fund. We could do so much in pay for success, so much in social impact bonds, microloans, etc. We can build the economy and build companies at the same time we solve the problems. And then what you actually end up doing is you align your workforce better to get results. So plug the problem into the data, you go up to the right, how we're going to build it, how we're going to measure it, how we're going to design it, how we're going to sell it. You're going to do mergers and acquisitions down here because people are going to be forced to do that because they're going to need capacity. They go to the investment portfolio, they sell it, and then what you do is when you're successful and de-risk it, then you go back to government with their solution. So we spent a lot of time. I've been pretty much, we've got a lot of smarter people than me on this, and I think we're actually close to doing it. And to give you a couple examples of where we're going, we did 2 kind of pilots of this, and we're going to do another one in Edmonton now, but one was missing kids. We put a lot of data together between police, the university, and the ministry, and we threw it in and we crunched it, and they came back and they said, you know, the longer the kid is missing, the more apt they are to be in harm's way. What's the response? Well, I don't think we need a lab to figure that one out. Common sense might have got us there. We loaded social services data. Guess what? Missing kids, predictable, over 90% of the time. Not a police response anymore. Let's stop it from happening. We had a shooting. Some say it was a racial-based shooting. This technology existed, but we tried to do it different. It was in a farmyard, 4 kids methed up, drugged up, go into a farmyard, farmer's threatened, or feels threatened, shoots one of the kids, kills it. First Nations kids that got shot. There's a group that's, you know, claiming racism. Let's park that. We're not going to solve that today. Real question is, how do we avoid face-to-face contact on rural crime? Government wanted tougher laws. We already had pretty tough one. They want different legislation in relation to trespassing, which I was the senior bureaucrat in charge of that. Farmers wanted the right to bear arms. We know that both of those haven't had a great deal of success. So we decided something different. Threw up a $25,000 reward, threw it out to the tech sector. Tech sector came back. It was a beekeeper and a hardware engineer, built a device for $50 that you could put it on your tractor, your truck, your welder, anything of value. If it moved, it sent you a text. If it wasn't you, you activated the GPS and forwarded to police in real time. Property back. It's going to be a multi-million-dollar company of a startup in a small town. So we are in the middle of right now in the Edmonton Police Service building a community solutions accelerator. It'll be stood up here in the next 3 months. It'll have some big private partners by choice, partners that want to take risk with us, partners that want to actually build this with us, rapid prototype, get it to market, test it before we sell. We don't want any profit. It's going to be through our foundation, our police foundation, so now we can do procurement better. We can get rid of all the barriers. and we can actually go to the market. So what we can actually do is bring data to the table. So one of the first ones we're going to do is liquor store thefts. And this is just one, and it's into 4 categories. I won't go into it because I don't have time, but it's pretty complex. But this one is a quick hit. We've had 9,000 liquor store thefts in the city of Edmonton this year. There's cities other than us that have had a lot more. What do? We keep running to the call. So we charged an individual the other day with 37 of them. Got out the next day. He had one condition. Anybody want to guess what it was? Don't go to the liquor store. Man, was that easy, hey? That was the solution. Do you know how many times that's going on in our 2 countries and across the UK right now? There's the money. So bottom line is, private sector putting up a reward. We'll bring companies in. We'll throw it out to an RFP. Throw it out also to some bright university students. First prize, probably, if it's a 50% reduction over a 30 to 60 day period, it'll be 125 grand. If it's an 80% reduction, it'll be 250 grand. And access to 4,000 stores. Done. Hopefully that'll get done within a few months. We need an accelerator with our private partners because we are responding to stuff that we can't solve. Mental health and addictions, the police are the response 24/7, 365 days of the year, the only response that can't say no, but we need the private sector and some of our other partners to help us solve it. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. Some things to ponder on. And you know, I'm really appreciative to be here with you and to share ideas and the friendships that we established, because a lot of the things that when I've had dialogue with individuals here just helps us put the pieces together. And the reality is this isn't about data, this is about leadership. We all know how to do it, but we got to bet on the people that are ready to take some chances and take some risks together, and we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but at the same time, we got to protect the things we're good at, because there's bad people. This isn't to say that there's only one response. As I said, we have a real-time crime center. We have that too. We've had one terrorist threat and attack. We've dealt with that. We're pretty good at that. You always need to be better. We always need to have our hands on deck on that, but we're really not very good at this area. And I can almost say, and I was talking with John from New York, and I've talked to Jose from Miami, and I've been pretty much in most US states, across the UK and Australia, etc. This problem exists worldwide. And why does it exist? Because it's hard to fix. But because it's hard to fix means that we need more hands on deck to help solve it. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.